Hello, and welcome to this training module all about proper sanitation and safety procedures using ServSafe guidelines. I'm John Thayer, and I'll be your host today. To begin, we will take a look at an overview of basic sanitation practices using ServSafe guidelines and also general safety in restaurants, including hand washing, proper use of knives and meat slicers, time temperature control, and basic cleaning and sanitation. By the end of this training module, you should know how to properly handle all these situations against the standards of a ServSafe certified employee. Let's start with hand washing. Hand washing is extremely important to teach correctly in the restaurant industry. Because employees will be handling food that will be served to customers, having clean hands is key. There are 6 steps that should be followed to ensure the hand washing procedure is done correctly and successfully. First thing you need to do is wet your hands with water temperatures at 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Next, apply soap, enough to get a good lather. After lathering, give your hands a good scrub, really getting between the fingers and under the nails for 10 to 15 seconds. Now rinse off your hands and dry them with a single-use paper towel or a hand dryer. Finally, use a paper towel to turn off the sink. There are specific times where hand washing is extremely essential. Some of the more important times are after using the restroom. As a note, it is important to double wash after using the restroom, in the restroom, then washing them again after leaving to ensure that you did not dirty your hands on the way out of the restroom. After touching raw meat, touching your hair, face, or body, after coughing, sneezing, eating, drinking, smoking, handling chemicals, taking out the garbage, cleaning tables or dishes, handling money, or touching anything that could potentially contaminate the food. The next thing we are going to look at is proper safety training. Every employee in the kitchen should know proper safety training on the equipment that is in the kitchen, even if they do not use it. It is important for them to know how to handle and behave around those using the equipment, focusing mainly on knives and the meat slicer, the really dangerous equipment. When handling knives, it is important to select the right knife for the right task. You won't want to use a chef's knife to cut small items, and you wouldn't want to use a tiny paring knife on big items such as meat. You need to keep the blades sharp. They say you are more likely to cut yourself with a dull knife than a sharp knife. Always use a cutting board. This is for sanitary purposes as well as not wanting to damage your prep areas. Always clean your knives directly after use to avoid the dishwasher from cutting themselves. Store the knives in the correct location, nowhere else, to avoid accidental injuries, and never try to catch a falling knife. It's not worth cutting yourself to catch it. As for the meat slicer, you have to be at least 18 years old to operate this piece of equipment. You need to be very alert when using a slicer. The blades are extremely sharp and moving very fast, so it can be easy to cut yourself. Cut very slow and precisely. Always follow through with every push to make sure the meat is fully cut and not halfway cut. Never grab the meat that is cut under the slicer while it is running. One wrong move and you could lose a finger. Ensure that the safety guards are secure before plugging the slicer in. Keep the slicer off at all times besides when you are actually cutting. Finally, during cleanup, unplug the slicer while remaining alert. Even though it won't turn on you, you can still cut yourself on the blade. The next subject matter is time temperature control. Basically, you need to know that some food is potentially hazardous if not cooked and refrigerated properly. In general, the danger zone for food is between 41 to 135 degrees Fahrenheit. This means food that is potentially hazardous needs to be stored below 41 degrees. As for cooking meats in particular, there are internal temperatures that need to be reached and maintained, usually for 15 seconds unless it is a thick cut, then usually for 4 minutes. Any ground meat needs to be cooked to 155 degrees Fahrenheit. Any poultry has to be cooked to 165. Fish is 145, and beef and pork cuts range from 120 to 155, depending on the degree of doneness desired. In general, you want to reach 145 minimum according to ServSafe to ensure that the meat is free from microorganisms. Having rare items on your menu should come with a disclaimer warning about the potential hazard of eating undercooked meat to protect you from lawsuits. Finally, we need to discuss general cleaning and sanitizing. You need to make sure all of your equipment is properly washed and sanitized. Not going into how a dishwasher works, for it cleans and sanitizes the dishes for you, but you need to make sure that any surfaces that food touches is clean and sanitize. There are 5 steps to cleaning and sanitizing. First, remove any bits of food from the surface, followed by washing the surface with soap and hot water. Next, rinse the surface and follow up with sanitizing the surface. Depending on the sanitizer you are using, there's a correct temperature you have to have the sanitizing solution at, and there are test strips to ensure that you are actually sanitizing. Finally, allow to air dry. This is to prevent potential recontamination of the items being sanitized. Now, when do you sanitize? Easy. Anything that has been used and you are done using before you begin working with different foods, such as working with a raw meat, then working with vegetables, remember to wash your hands, and any time you think an item could have been contaminated, and if the item is in constant use, you need to sanitize it at least every 4 hours. Now that you have seen this training module, you should know how to wash your hands properly, how to behave around dangerous equipment, time temperature controls on different food items and the danger zone of potentially hazardous foods, and general cleaning and sanitation. It is important for every person in the restaurant industry to learn at least these 4 things to help keep the food clean and safe to eat. Also, it can save your restaurant from lawsuits because of foodborne illnesses can be caused by poor sanitation, and your restaurant will be held liable for any illness if it is due to employees' lack of knowledge and poor sanitation practices. This module should help protect you from that, but also from injuries from improper knife use. If you don't train your employees on general safety, you could be held liable for the injuries. If you have any more questions, visit servesafe.com. They offer classes to further your knowledge. Thanks for listening.